welcome to the first edition of TROMAtic EXPERIENCE. I think this is going to be truly traumatic. Not traumatic, but traumatic, this entire series.
Traumatic to good taste.
Yeah. Basically, the entire premise of this new series here, yet another new series here on our YouTube channel, we figure if we throw enough crap at you, something will stick, right? And crap being a key word here, because we're going to be going through the Troma films, Troma Entertainment library. We figured what better way to start this series off than the Toxic Avenger from 1984. It's arguably Troma's biggest movie, right?
Yeah, it's the one. If anybody knows one single movie from Troma, it's going to be that one.
As far as the Toxic Avenger, though, it actually was successful enough, at least on some level, that it produced an entire franchise. I mean, they made what, 3 more movies, I believe it was, and yeah, because they made 4 total movies, and they had an animated series, right?
The Toxic Crusaders, Saturday morning series. You wouldn't believe it from Troma. I mean, of course, it didn't have any gore like Troma had because it was geared for Saturday morning TV.
I mean, if you watched any of the other stuff that we've done here on the YouTube channel, you kind of know. We just kind of have a little bit of fun with it. We'll talk about it, give a little bit of background information, anything interesting that we see, and then we'll give our rating. Now, for this one, what we're gonna do, we're gonna have our own Melvin scale. Now, if you've ever seen the Toxic Avenger, you know who Melvin is. That's basically right. It is the Toxic Avenger, right?
And that was his alter ego, you might say, except that he can't turn back into Melvin because well, we'll get into that with this episode.
So that will be our rating scale. Is we'll give out Melvins, and it'll be just like a star rating, except 0 to 5, except instead of stars, Melvins. But just like our Cannon Fodder series that we do over on the podcast, the All American Spook Show podcast that comes out every Monday at 6 p.m. East, it's a sliding scale there. Like you're not necessarily comparing on Cannon Fodder. We're not comparing that to like great, really, really great cinema. We're kind of comparing it to other Cannon films. And that's going to be the same spirit here with these Melvins that we give out. Is we're comparing it to other Troma. So if we give out a really high rating, you're gonna be like, what? How did this movie get that high? Well, slow down. It's because it's Troma, right? You can only compare it to other Troma movies, and that's just to be fair to these movies, right?
Yeah, because they're movies. Cinema is of course subjective. So, but we're not talking about Citizen Kane here. We're talking about Citizen Toxic.
Yeah. There were at least 3 working titles that I could find: Health Club Hero, and Health Club Horror. So yeah, I mean, I guess any of those would have worked, right? But
true, yeah. I mean, but then later on, though, down the road, there was some other Health Club related horror movies. But I'm glad they went with the Toxic Avenger name for this one, because down the road you'll get, not from Troma necessarily, but there's a Death Spa, probably another one that I'm blanking on right now. Killer Workout, I think, was another horror movie. So yeah, there was a whole subgenre in the 80s. Of course, well, with aerobics and aerobicize and all that being a big thing in the 80s, there was plenty of movies set in gyms and aerobics classes, or at least aerobics scenes.
Now, I actually found 2 other titles, but these were in other countries. In France, one of the titles was Toxic, and then in Germany, and I believe in West Germany as well, it was known as Atomic Hero. So either way, right? You're kind of getting to the same place, but so I think if you're looking at the credits there, you'll see directed by Michael Hers and Samuel Weil, but that's Lloyd Kaufman. I don't know why he did that, but he did it. It was a screenplay by Joe Ritter, and the story was by Lloyd Kaufman. It stars Andrea Miranda, Mitch Cohen, and Jennifer Baptiste, and Pat Ryan, of course.
Yeah.
That's the guy that is the big fat mayor in this movie. We have seen him. We have seen him in some other stuff before, right?
Yeah, he's like, if we aren't necessarily doing connections per se for Traumatic Experience, but if we were, we would have covered nearly half of his filmography already on various other episodes of the Spook Show, including he had a bit part in Invasion USA. I think he was even uncredited, just as just some bit bystander or whatever in a scene. And then he was also in, of course, a Spook Show favorite here among us, and probably people that view our show or listen to our show. That would be the Street Trash episode. He was in the movie Street Trash. He was the owner of that junkyard.
This one also stars Mark Torgl as Melvin Junko. That's where we get the name for how many the rating system here, the Melvins.
Yeah.
What was with the chief of police in this movie though? Like straight up like acting like a Nazi. Like what are they going? What are they going for there?
He was like even they even gave him a German accent.
Yeah, and it seemed to get like thicker and thicker as the movie went along. It was like he would kind of downplay it at first, and then by the end of the
Yeah.
movie, he's like going full blown. Like I think he even calls the mayor Fuhrer. And I mean, mayor, you know, Troma truly was like the home of over the top, gore, wacky, nonsense. You know, I guess it not necessarily was. It still is. I mean, it still is the home. Yeah, but like if you just want it to be gross, gory, you know,
Funny, laugh, sometimes intentionally and other times unintentionally. Funny.
yeah. Now we should add, you know, as far as like looking at this through today's lens, there's probably some sketchy material here, right? But you have to put it in context of when it came out, and you know, it's kind of like we give the warning out on front of Grindhouse Gutter when we do that. Like, just remember, this was a different time, you know.
They're kind of like the punk rock of the horror world. Like they just come set up and do whatever guerrilla style filmmaking here. I'm sure they didn't have permits to shoot anywhere they shot. Probably a lot of these movies get shot in the streets of New York, because that's where Troma's headquarters. I was trying to say Troma and headquarters at the same time. It came out Homa, but Troma's headquarters is in New York, and yeah, they would shoot all around different areas of New York. See, I'm sure they didn't have permits for all the stuff. They just go out and do it guerrilla style, and it shows in their type of filmmaking and their like you said, their gore, humor. They try to disgust you if they could, or they try to offend you if they could. If it's all in good Troma style humor.
But some of the gore in this movie is like, whoa, you know, like
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's pretty wild. Some of it.
Yeah. Especially the most probably disturbing scene of gore and just disturbing kind of scene. It's also funny, but again, it's a good example of what Troma's good at, as far as giving you something that's very offensive, but making you laugh at it. But also, it's probably the most realistically gory and messed up scene in the movie is the kid on the bicycle when they run over.
Oh God, that wasn't even the one I was thinking of. But yeah,
But
I was thinking of weightlifter.
weightlifter dude, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's messed up too. It's just the other scene is more messed up, I guess, because he's like I think he was he 12 or 14 supposed to be, because they're doing the whole Death Race 2000 thing of like running over people for points, kind of.
Yeah.
And they pick this kid out. It's on his bicycle, and they run over him, and then they back up over him again because he's still alive. And then the girls that are with the thugs or whatever, and get out and go take pictures, and they're all crowded around. That's a very realistically messed up accident scene looking thing right there, when they're like, whoever did the effects for that, and I didn't look that up. We'll have to check. Maybe we'll have to do that within the context of the show. I'm not sure who did the makeup effects for this movie, but that particular one was very well done and realistic and disturbing.
I'm just looking at the credits. The special effects by Matthew West. He was the special effects assistant, but the makeup department, special makeup effects artist. You've got Jennifer Aspinall and Tom.
Oh, well, that makes sense. She worked on Street Track.
And then Tom Lawton. And then you've also got Ralph Cordero as Ralph G. Cordero II. Now, as far as editing is concerned, film editing by Richard Haynes, not so good.
Yeah.
It jumps around quite a bit. Some of it makes no sense at all. Like continuity errors abound, but I suppose that we're going to run into a lot of that on traumatic experience as we go along. We'll get into our final thoughts. Now, we came together as a group and we gave it the rating. So we're not going to go like person to person, although we can give our final thoughts. But we're going to give this one 5 Melvins. I'm probably going to be hard pressed to find many that are guaranteed to get a high mark like this one is. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a few more. I'm not saying there won't be, but this one for sure. I mean, it's like the standard of Troma, right?
Yeah, and like I was saying, if anybody who knows anything about, or I'll put it this way, anybody who doesn't hardly know anything about Troma would know at least probably this movie. And again, and by that same token, if you have never seen a Troma movie and you want to dip your toes in the pool, then there's no better place to start than the Toxic Avenger. And I mean, there's other places you can go from there. There's not too many places to go too far, much more up above that. There's plenty of places to go below it. But I think that's a good entry level movie to start with if you're wanting to, dip your toes into the Troma pool.
Yeah. And we want you to come along on this experience with us. So we highly encourage you, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. 5 Melvins. You're not going to get any higher rating as far as here on the TROMAtic Experience from us on this one. So
this is one of those that you could take outside the context of Troma, the TROMAtic Experience. And if we were rating it in our regular show, yeah, it wouldn't get as high marks as, some like Dawn of the Dead or Jaws or whatever, but it would be comparable to some of the other low budget, independent splatter movies and things we've done before. So this is high marks when it comes to a Troma movie.
We haven't quite decided yet whether this will be like, say, monthly or every other month. We might end up rotating this with our Video Vortex series, so it might go back and forth between that. But we'll sort all that out. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this first edition of TROMAtic Experience. So if you're like us, we're like, yeah, we've seen a lot of main Troma titles, but we haven't seen nearly all of these. So it'll be kind of an adventure in a way, like is similar to Hammer Horror and Order, where there's a lot of those that I've seen, but way more that I haven't. So
yeah.
We're kind of discovering things as we go along here. Hopefully we'll have Donnie on the next one, or Will. Will's rarely here anyway, so if you listen to the podcast, you're more than likely to hear him there than see him on the YouTube series. But for those two guys and the Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. Remember, we are from the All American Spook Show podcast every Monday at 6 p.m. East. Go to aaspookshow.com. That's the center of the Spook Show universe for all things Spook Show. So we will talk to you next time.